And many thanks to our friends on the 5. Welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert. We are following two big breaking news stories tonight. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, obliterates the left and their black helicopter, tinfoil hat, Russia collusion, conspiracy theories, and slams the Democrats for spreading detestable lies during his very, very powerful Senate testimony earlier today. Also, Newt Gingrich, Greg Jarrett, Jay Sekulow, Sarah Carter, Geraldo Rivera are all here tonight with reaction. Plus, we are awaiting tonight the return to the United States of an American student who was jailed in North Korea for more than a year. He is in need of serious medical treatment and is currently in a coma. We are following that story closely. But first, Jeff Sessions' testimony today, a huge win for President Trump and his administration as they continue to fight back against the unprecedented attacks against them. And that is tonight's very important opening monologue. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, he came out of the box earlier today swinging and ready to shoot down the massive lie that has been pushed endlessly by the Democrats and, of course, the Destroy Trump media about so-called Trump-Russian collusion, despite no evidence to this point. It has up to now been a complete and utter lie and a total fabrication. So when the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, was pressed about it by the Democrats, well, guess what? He punched back hard in a major way. Watch this.
I was your colleague in this body for 20 years, at least some of you, and and the suggestion that I participated in any collusion, that I was aware of any collusion with the Russian government to hurt this country, which I have served with honor for 35 years, or to undermine the integrity of our democratic process is an appalling and detestable lie.
Now, good for the Attorney General, and he wasn't finished because, once again, despite no evidence of so-called Trump-Russia collusion, the Democrats, they still continue to push this baseless black helicopter conspiracy theory. Take a look at this testy exchange between the Attorney General and liberal Senator Ron Wyden.
Mr. Comey said that there were matters with respect to the recusal that were problematic and he couldn't talk about them. What are they?
Why don't you tell me? There are none, Senator Wyden. There are none. I can tell you that for absolute certainty. This is a secret innuendo being leaked out there about me, and I don't appreciate it. And I've tried to give my best and truthful answers to any committee I've appeared before. And it's really, people are suggesting through innuendo that I have been not honest about matters, and I've tried to be honest.
All right, checkmate. Now, what's so disgusting about all of this is that Democrats, including some who are actually on this Senate Intelligence Committee and were actually questioning Jeff Sessions today, have admitted themselves no evidence of collusion. Now, since some of these Democrats are so partisan that they have forgotten, let us remind them of their own words.
Do you agree with this conclusion that the president has reached, that there was no evidence of collusion?
You know, we haven't seen any of that whatsoever, George. We've been looking and showing everything that they possibly have. That has not led to that.
The last time we spoke, Senator, I asked you if you had actually seen evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and you said to me, and I'm quoting you now, you said, not at this time. Has anything changed since we spoke last?
Well, no, it hasn't.
I know we need to go soon, but just to be clear, there has been no actual evidence yet.
No, it has not been.
Okay, I just want
no, it has not.
Wow. So despite the fact that all those prominent Democrats have been forced, based on the facts as we know them, based on the evidence, to say no Russian collusion, no evidence at this time, well, many on the left and in the Destroy Trump media, they're still running completely insanely wild with the completely false conspiracy theory. Now, that just proves what we have been telling you on the show all along. This is not about getting to the truth, finding answers, finding out what the facts are. The Democrats, members of the liberal mainstream media, they don't care about any of that. Why? Because their goal, if we're going to be blunt and honest, is to destroy and discredit President Trump now by any means necessary. And in this case, that means embarrassing themselves by pushing debunked conspiracy theories. Now, the left in this country has become so unhinged about the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy that doesn't exist that at today's hearing, Senator Tom Cotton, he decided to call it out for what it really is, a fantasy and something that you'd only read about in a Tom Clancy spy novel. Take a look at this.
Mr. Sessions, are you familiar with what spies called tradecraft?
A little bit.
That involves things like covert communications and dead drops and brush passes, right?
That is part of it.
Do you like spy fiction? John le Carré, Daniel Silva, Jason Matthews?
Yeah, Alan first. David Ignatius. Just finished Ignatius's book.
Do you like Jason Bourne or James Bond movies? Have you ever, in any of these fantastical situations, heard of a plot line so ridiculous that a sitting United States senator and an ambassador of a foreign government colluded at an open setting with hundreds of other people to pull off the greatest caper in the history of espionage?
By the way, I happen to love Bourne and Bond movies. All right, but in all seriousness, Senator Cotton absolutely nailed it here, and he deserves a lot of credit for calling out these Democrats and, of course, the Destroy Trump media's lies about what's really going on here. This has now become nothing more than a witch hunt, plain and simple. And there's another massive part of this story that involves actual scandals, actual crimes that have been committed that they're ignoring, something the Destroy Trump media refuses to tell you about. We'll tell you here on this show. Let's start with the leader of this political witch hunt. Right now, that would be special counsel Robert Mueller, who should be closing up shop. One, he has stunning conflicts of interest, like the fact he's known James Comey for years. They're good friends. In fact, Comey testified that the reason he had a friend leak a memo, which we believe is illegal, to the New York Times was to bring about the appointment of a special counsel. And big surprise, it ended up being Robert Mueller. And Fox News previously reported Comey's testimony last week was, quote, closely coordinated with the special counsel. So think about this for a minute. You have a disgruntled former fired employee in James Comey, clearly spiteful, clearly angry, out for revenge, and now one of his closest personal friends is now leading the investigation into President Trump, who Comey is accusing of wrongdoing. There is no way that this investigation could be fair or objective. It is now impossible. So who do you think Mueller is going to side with, his friend or the president? A friend, by the way, that he's going after. His friend is going after. This is a massive conflict of interest. It cannot be ignored. And that's why our colleague and friend, Greg Jarrett, here at the Fox News Channel, who will join us later in the program, is calling it all out. And according to Greg, Comey and Mueller's relationship may violate two federal laws. Here's the first one. And by the way, we'll just read the header, 28 CFR 452 or 45.2, disqualification arising from personal or political relationship. Now, that's what we're describing with Comey and Mueller's relationship. And here's the next law, 28 CFR 600.7. Conduct and accountability. Now, this says that the Attorney General can fire a special counsel if he or she has a conflict of interest. But that's not all. It gets even worse and more outrageous. Several outlets have reported that 3 key people on Mueller's investigation team have actually donated to the Democrats. Now, that's why we tonight are calling for this special counsel to be shut down. And by the way, that brings us to the real scandal that has been completely ignored by the media, by the Democrats. And the fact is this: the former Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, tried to obstruct justice by interfering in the FBI's Clinton email server investigation. Now, here's how James Comey described it last week in front of this very same committee. Take a look.
The Clinton campaign at the time was using all kinds of euphemisms, security review matters, things like that, for what was going on. We were getting to a place where the Attorney General and I were both going to have to testify and talk publicly about it. And I wanted to know, was she going to authorize us to confirm we had an investigation? And she said, yes, but don't call it that, call it a matter. And I said, why would I do that? And she said, just call it a matter.
Wow. Add that to, of course, the tarmac meeting with Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton and much more. This is the real scandal here tonight, and it's only getting bigger. Circuit News' Sarah Carter, who will also be with us later tonight, she's been blowing this scandal wide open along with her colleague, John Solomon. Now, take a look at this headline. Comey got steely silence after confronting Loretta Lynch about Clinton's email probe. Now, according to Sarah's report, James Comey actually confronted Loretta Lynch over attempts to influence the Clinton probe. Now, if Robert Mueller wants to investigate real obstruction of justice, then he should be looking into Loretta Lynch and what she did. And if Democrats, if they want to talk about collusion, since their conspiracy theories about President Trump have now been completely debunked, then let's talk about Hillary Clinton colluding with Vladimir Putin, the Uranium One deal. And remember, she signed off as Secretary of State, handing over 20% of America's uranium to Putin and the Russians, of course, the foundational material to make a nuclear weapon. And while people, by the way, all involved in this deal, they were donating big bucks to the Clinton Foundation. And her husband, Bill Clinton, well, he was doubling his speaking fees in Moscow. Now, the propaganda media has completely gotten this wrong, and they're backwards. They've absolutely hit a new low. They're the worst. And as we have explained right here on this program, there are 5 forces now working to take down President Trump. This is a real, clear, present danger to the president you elected last November. First, of course, and I think the most dangerous, the deep state. Those selectively leaking information to damage the president. By the way, kind of like James Comey did. Second, the Destroy Trump media, a bunch of tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists caught red-handed, colluding with the Clinton campaign, as WikiLeaks revealed. Also, of course, you got the unhinged Democrats, a bunch of sore losers, obstructionists at this point, who, by the way, are just bitter about the election. They never got over the fact that Donald Trump won. And, of course, sorry to say it, you got weak, spineless Republicans, no backbone, never supported Donald Trump to begin with. And, by the way, and then you got the whole never-Trumper crowd. They want relevance. They want vindication. They want to see the president fail so they can say, see, we told you so. But this has now become a serious moment of truth for the United States of America. We're either going to lose to these forces and allow them to distract this president from getting people off of poverty, out of food stamps, and back in the labor force, buying homes, the president and the agenda you elected him to enact, or we can stop it right now, what they're trying to do to this man, because they don't want his success. Their success, his success is their failure. To do this, James Comey and Loretta Lynch need to be investigated. Robert Mueller needs to go. And with all due respect, it's time for Hillary Clinton to be prosecuted. Joining us now with reaction, the author of a brand new book just out today. It's called Understanding Trump, the former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, great to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, do you see what I just said? 5 forces at work destroying the president, and that this is a clear present danger for the country?
Well, look, I think we're in a clear-cut cultural civil war. I think that there are a number of Republicans who don't get it. I would start with the very beginning of your monologue, and I wish every Republican would look at the lesson that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, gave them today. He was passionate. He used strong language. He didn't back down. He had the facts. And he was prepared to go nose to nose with liberals every time they smeared him. And I think he clearly won because he was willing to be even more judgmental and more emotional and more committed than were the Democrats. Now, if every Republican learned that, and let me take the example of Attorney General Lynch. It's been, I think, a week since the Democratic ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, Senator Feinstein, said she thought that the Congress ought to look into whether or not Attorney General Lynch was in fact obstructing justice. Now, I can't understand a Republican Party which is offered on a platter by the ranking Democrat of the Intelligence Committee, a very senior respected member of the Senate, an opportunity to open up an investigation of the Democratic Attorney General, and I've heard nothing. And this is just typical. We allow the left to set the agenda. We allow the left to define the terms of the debate. We are passive. And I think that it's really a huge, huge mistake to not take these people head on.
Let me stay on Loretta Lynch while you're there, because I think this is important. By the way, I would agree Sessions eviscerated these Democrats today, and it should be an abject lesson for every Republican. That's how you fight. That's how you stand up for truth. And I don't see, look, I think there's so many weak Republicans. It is frankly embarrassing and pathetic on both the agenda, the getting work done in the Congress, and secondly, standing up for the things that they promised the American people. But back to Loretta Lynch. You have the tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton in a plane. Totally inappropriate, possible collusion, possible obstruction. Then it gets even worse than that. She gets James Comey to take the word investigation and turn it into a matter. Later, Sarah Carter, as I was explaining in the opening monologue, that James Comey confronts her, that she had put the kibosh on any possible indictment, regardless of where the evidence led, and gave him a steely, silent look, and then said, anything else? And that, to me, if she doesn't get brought before a committee and investigated, we don't have justice in this country.
But let's go back to your very first point. How can you have a Republican House and a Republican Senate and not bring in the Attorney General and the former president under oath and get each of them to describe what they were discussing? I mean, I think this was, in terms of why people are sick of Washington, the idea that they happen to be at the same airport. That this is, remember, 4 or 5 days before they're going to interview Secretary Clinton, which they did, by the way, not under oath. I mean, you go through this whole thing, and it's no wonder the average American is disgusted. As you know, I was just out at Ridgewood, New Jersey tonight with my new book, Understanding Trump, and had hundreds of people there. And the number of them who get everything you just said tonight and cannot understand why the Republicans are not standing up and fighting, I think was startling to me how intense it is, how rapidly it's spreading, for example, that Mueller, there are actually 4 people he's hired who donated to the Democrats. One of them worked for the Clinton Foundation. One of them, by the way...
You know what she did for the Clinton Foundation? She was fighting Freedom of Information Act requests as it relates to the Clinton Foundation.
And another one of them...
How did she get on this?
Look, another one of them cheated and refused to give the defense information it should have in 2 major cases, Enron and Arthur Andersen. That lawyer helped destroy 85,000 jobs, and later, when it was too late, the Supreme Court voted 9-0 that what he had done was wrong. Now, when Mueller my point earlier today was, if Mueller wanted to prove he was reasonable, let's cut a deal. You have to hire 1 pro-Trump lawyer for every anti-Trump lawyer. And let's see whether or not he's willing to actually do that. But I had a former, I had a news person today say to me, well, are you suggesting maybe he just hired the 4 best people in the country? And I said, let me get this straight. You believe there's no Republican lawyer capable of being on that team? I mean, this is the mindset of the elite media that I think just tells you how sick the system is.
All right, but there's 3 things here, and I got to go to a break. And one is it's Comey's best friend, the special counsel. Number 2, hires Clinton's lawyer for the Clinton Foundation, who is fighting Freedom of Information requests. You forgot to mention that a number of them are also Obama Clinton donors. And it gets worse. All right, by the way, Speaker Gingrich has a brand new book out. It's on Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere, Understanding Trump. We'll ask him about that. We'll also ask him why the special counsel should get out of the way tomorrow and what Republicans should do. He'll join us after the break. And also, coming up next tonight.
We have got to restore a regular order principle. We cannot have persons in our intelligence agencies, our investigative agencies, or in Congress leaking sensitive matters.
The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, tears it up today, explaining how damaging and dangerous the leaks out of Washington are for our national security. Newt Gingrich has a reaction on that. And later tonight, Jay Sekulow, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, they weigh in on Sessions' testimony and Sarah Carter's big breaking news about James Comey and Loretta Lynch, and possibly Loretta Lynch putting the kibosh on any indictment on Clinton. Also tonight. Now, last night we told you about the disturbing play going on in New York City depicting the assassination of President Trump. But guess what? You won't believe that taxpayer dollars were actually given to the so-called Shakespeare in the Park Festival. That and more on this busy breaking news night tonight. We're glad you're with us on Hannity.
I'm Thomas.
Are these leaks serious threats to our national security, and is the Department of Justice taking them with the appropriate degree of seriousness in investigating and ultimately going to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law?
Thank you, Senator Cotton. We have had one successful case very recently in Georgia. That person has been denied bail, I believe, and is being held in custody. But some of these leaks, as you well know, are extraordinarily damaging to the United States security. And we have got to restore a regular order principle. We cannot have persons in our intelligence agencies, our investigative agencies, or in Congress leaking sensitive matters.
All right, that was the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, earlier today, stressing just how dangerous, how damaging the leaks are, the selective leaks out of Washington for the security of this country. We continue now with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. By the way, his brand new book out. It is in bookstores everywhere as of tonight, and, of course, on Amazon.com, Hannity.com, Understanding Trump. You know, Mr. President, I think about what you just heard there, and the president's attorney mentioned that this week, the selective leaks to damage the president. To me, if the Obama holdovers aren't removed now, if the deep state, those that have been leaking, aren't dealt with and prosecuted now, and the attorney general mentioned just one prosecution, but there are others, and I think at a much higher level. To me, they got a minnow, and they really need to get the great whites. I don't think this ever ends for the president, and he doesn't get the. Well, I'm glad I could make you. I'm glad I could make you laugh. You like a very colorful analogy. Well, no, but if we don't get these top people, it's dangerous.
Look, but let me be clear. This is not about the president or getting the president. I agree with General Kelly, the Secretary of Homeland Security, who said about a week ago, many of these verge on treason. I mean, this is about the survival and the safety of the United States of America and the people of the United States. I don't care if you're pro-Trump or you're anti-Trump. There is no excuse for people taking on themselves the right to take secrets and release them. And candidly, there's no excuse for the news media picking them up and printing them. We've gotten into this entire cycle of, I think, unpatriotic behavior in which people are utterly irresponsible. And I think they should be prosecuted. I think it should be aggressive and vigorous. And I frankly think, for example, everybody in the White House should have to go through a session on what the secrecy laws are. I think all new political appointees should have to go through a session on what the secrecy laws are and what the consequences will be if you violate them.
You know, we know crimes were committed. One was committed against General Flynn in a violation of the Espionage Act. We know these leaks, with all of this raw intelligence, they're all illegal acts. And I'm looking at Robert Mueller, and I see similarities to Patrick Fitzgerald, who knew on day one it was Richard Armitage. What did that go on for 3 years? Here, Mueller knows today there's no obstruction. Here he knows today the president was not involved in collusion. Here he knows today that he wasn't being investigated. And he's hiring all of these Obama, Clinton supporters, donors, and even Clinton's attorney to go after the president. This is bad.
And remember who appoints Fitzpatrick. It's James Comey, who at that time was an assistant attorney general. And he knows when he does it. He knows that Richard Armitage of the State Department was the leak. He knows that none of it was illegal. There was no crime involved. And he appoints Fitzpatrick anyway. Fitzpatrick then says to Armitage, be quiet. And he goes after Dick Cheney's chief of staff, Scooter Libby, because what he wants to do is coerce Libby into turning on the vice president. And Libby, who's an honorable man, refuses to do so. That's why I worry about the team that Mueller's assembling. I don't think they're going to get Trump, but I think they're going to get other people, because when you're involved in this kind of criminal investigation, people who have the power of the government can set you up for all sorts of secondary charges and can ruin your life and can bankrupt you hiring lawyers. And I think this is a bad deal.
This is a bad deal. I think there's great danger here. There's also investigative creep, as we call it. He starts out investigating one thing. It goes on for 3 years. He ends up with somebody falling into a perjury trap because they didn't remember. They made a mistake. Nobody gets to revise and extend their remarks, if you will. So the question is, what do Republicans do now, knowing there's no obstruction, knowing there's no collusion? Shouldn't this be shut down?
Look, I think the two intelligence committees have an easy task. You bring in Mueller, and you say to him, how often did you talk with Comey? How often did you swap information with Comey? Did you review Comey's testimony before he gave it? How many of Comey's various memos did you get out of regular order? I mean, I think you start with this whole question. I was initially in favor of Mueller, and given his past record, I tweeted favorable things, but the minute Comey explained with enormous arrogance that he had deliberately leaked a memo for the purpose of forcing a special counsel who just happens to be his close friend. From that minute on, I thought the fix is in and this is really sick.
I want to go back to one of the earlier questions I asked you tonight, and that was the 5 different groups that I argue are after Trump, starting with the deep state. And I want to tie it to something. You have this new book out today, and I think you have probably the keenest insight. Nobody thought that Trump would beat 16 other people in a primary. The media never thought that Donald Trump would be president. They're still in a state of shock, but there's also a state of anger and revenge that has emerged. And now it's about them, as you've described on this program before, them waking up every day. And how can we destroy him now? Now, in the process, the American people are being hurt. The millions in poverty on food stamps out of the labor force.
Oh, that's true. It hit me today trying to explain, when you look at a tax-paid play in New York City, which has the assassination of the president and the first lady, when you look at a so-called comedian holding the head of the president bleeding, the closest analogy I can come to is Arthur Miller's great play, The Crucible, which is about the witchcraft trials in Salem in the late 17th century. And it's that kind of mood. That's a play about mass hysteria. It's a play about people who suddenly decided that their neighbors were witches and had to be burned at the stake. You're seeing an entire process of psychological dislocation on the left, leading to behaviors that no reasonable person, I even find now liberal reporters beginning to flinch when they see things like this play where the president is assassinated and the first lady's assassinated. There's a sickness. And when you look at Kathy Grant and her holding up the president's head, there's a sickness out there that's beginning to sink into people, and they begin to realize how really bad it is. And I think you're even going to see moderate liberals begin to split away and say, that's crazy and you got to quit doing it. But that's the mood that worries me.
I would like to agree with you. I respectfully disagree. There's no evidence. It gets worse and worse. Imagine for almost 11 months now, the media just lying to the American people with no evidence. The people on that very committee today saying no evidence of collusion and sanctimoniously, creating smoke where there is none. But all right, it's called Understanding Trump. Bookstores everywhere, Amazon.com. Mr. Speaker, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you.
See you soon. And coming up, we have a lot more on the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, and his fiery Senate showdown from earlier today. Jay Sekulow, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett are all here to weigh in. Also, Sarah's explosive new report involving James Comey and Loretta Lynch. Did Loretta Lynch put the fix in for Hillary? That's next. Plus, it's the play in the park the Speaker was just talking about that will make you cringe. Some New Yorkers are loving it. A rendition of Julius Caesar showing President Trump look. And this is a Fox News alert. We have brand new video, Cincinnati, Ohio tonight, where the American student, you remember him, who is now in a coma in need of very serious medical attention. He just arrived in the U.S. after being jailed in North Korea for more than a year. If you remember, he was arrested last year, jailed for allegedly stealing a political sign. 15 years he was sentenced to hard labor. Now, we're going to have an update for you and find out more. And also tonight, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, he held nothing back today. He hit back hard, testifying on Capitol Hill. And in an op-ed for FoxNews.com, our very own Greg Jarrett asked this question tonight. Where does Jeff Sessions go to get his good name back? How about the president? Greg will join us in just a minute. Also tonight, though, John Solomon, Sarah Carter with CircaNews.com. An explosive new report. It reads this, quote, Comey got steely silence after confronting Loretta Lynch about Clinton's email probe. Joining us now with more from the American Center for Law and Justice, also part of the president's legal team, Jay Sekulow from CircaNews.com, Sarah Carter, and Fox News anchor attorney Greg Jarrett. Sarah, let me start with you, because we got to get to Sessions, but this report that is being ignored. So we have the tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton, number one. We have Loretta Lynch saying to Comey, it's not an investigation, it's a matter. And he capitulated to that. Now you're saying Comey confronted Loretta Lynch on the issue of her, had already decided to put the kibosh and cover for Hillary Clinton no matter what the evidence showed, basically?
Well, I think what Comey was trying to do was trying to get her reaction to the evidence that he had in his hands. What we know is that he's been briefing lawmakers on this. He has a communication. It is a private communication between two political figures that is considered classified because of the way the FBI obtained that communication and evidence. And what happened was he had gone to Loretta Lynch. He went to the Department of Justice. He talked to her about meeting Bill Clinton on the tarmac in 2016. And then he showed her this piece of evidence. And he said, according to the lawmakers that were briefed by him, he said, could you please look at this? And when she actually looked at it, she looked back up at him with steely silence, which he said lasted for a long time, and asked him if he had any more questions, and if not, he should leave. And that was it. And that's what we don't know. What is it that he has in his hands? What was it that he's looking at? What is it that he's been briefing lawmakers in those classified sessions that made him so concerned that he approached her? But then again, in the end, right, he didn't move forward to the Department of Justice. He didn't pursue the case against Hillary Clinton. So this is the contradiction here. This is the irony here.
All right, This is so amazing to me. Jay Sekulow, let's go to the legal side of this. Okay, that would certainly demand an investigation into possible obstruction of justice, possible the fix was in from Hillary Clinton from the beginning. If we go back to the email investigation alone, remember, the legal standard is gross negligence. He said she was extremely careless. We already know she mishandled classified information and top secret information and special access program information in a mom and shop bathroom closet. And of course, she destroyed such information. That is all. Two of those issues are felonies, are they not?
They are. And of course, you know, extreme carelessness is what gross negligence means. So that's the part of the legal definition. But the idea, and I think Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, said this correct when she said that whole interchange with former FBI Director Comey about the decision to call this a matter. And by the way, when the FBI does something, it's an investigation. But calling it a matter, she said, needs to be investigated. Now, I think that there is a deeper issue here, and that is, why is it that those kind of issues did not get any discussion? Why is it that James Comey, for instance, went to the TV cameras about a little less than about 11 months ago and said that he made the determination there was not a prosecutable case against Hillary Clinton, which, by the way, is not his decision. But yet, after assuring the president 3 times, and he acknowledged this in his written testimony, that the president was not and has not been a subject of the investigation, he would not get that information out. That he would not get out. But by the way, you remember I was very critical of what James Comey did to Hillary Clinton during that.
Well, your
it's on
background
again,
in
off
criminal
again, on
cases.
again.
You had a great Supreme Court case in Georgia last year. You won 7-0, Georgia Supreme Court. All right, let me get Greg in this segment because we have another segment with all of you. And I think, Greg, this is very key because you have been focused in on 18 U.S.C. 4, which, of course, would say that James Comey, if he thought there was obstruction, had a legal obligation to say it immediately. Also, the Records Act, 18 U.S. Code 641. This was government material he leaked to the New York Times. Where's his investigation into him? And then he did it to get a special counsel who ends up being his best friend.
And where has James Comey been since this meeting took place with Loretta